Hey, welcome back, Casibang's crew. This is the third video in Unit 7. This is our video on emotions. All right, so when we're talking about emotions, you all know what emotions are. You've all experienced a myriad of different emotions in growing up. What we're going to focus on is the theories of emotion. How do we feel? How do we experience emotion? So there are three elements to emotion. It's the physical arousal, so the physiological feelings in our body, the things that happen on our body, like our heart rate increasing, our breathing becoming rapid, our pupils dilating. So the physiological things that are happening in our body, the behavior. So what do we do? Right? What are we doing now because of that physical arousal? And then the awareness or our cognition, our brain telling us what it is that we're feeling. So identifying emotions is a right hemisphere, the right hemisphere of our brain process. Okay, this is what happens in our right hemisphere. All right, so the first theory of emotion is the James Lange theory of emotion. And these are named after the researchers. Okay, researcher James, researcher Lange. Okay, they worked on this together. They said that, or a statement that they would say is, I am embarrassed because my face is red. So what they're saying is that the physical reaction happens first, and then you feel the emotion. Okay, so the physical reaction happens first, and then you feel the emotion. The second theory is Cannon-Bard, and again, named after two researchers. Okay, researcher Cannon, researcher Bard. So the Cannon-Bard theory says that first, the stimulus that we're experiencing has to be routed to our thalamus first. And remember, our thalamus takes care of all of our senses. So then, after it's routed through our thalamus, then we have a bodily reaction, so some sort of physical reaction. Okay, our heart starts beating. And the feeling of the emotion happen at the same time. Right? So first we're going to go to the thalamus, and then our bodily reaction and our feeling of the emotion are going to happen at the same time. Okay, see, the important thing here is that routing to the thalamus and then the reaction and the feeling are happening together. Okay, so next, on to our next theory. This one is called the Schachter-Singer theory, again, named after Schachter and Singer, or the cognitive arousal theory, or the two-factor theory. Okay, lots of names for this one. A lot of people, I will occasionally call it the Schachter two-factor. Okay, so I'm putting names together. Okay, Schachter two-factor theory. So this one says that cognition, our ability to think and label something, is needed to label the emotion because biological reactions are sometimes really similar. So we could be feeling a physical reaction, but our cognition is way more important to be able to label that particular reaction. So for example, let's say that you walk into my classroom and immediately your heart starts beating really, really fast and your breathing starts to get really, really shallow. Okay, so that's a physical reaction, but that is a reaction. It could be a reaction of a lot of different emotions, right? So now we have to think. We have to use our cognition. We have to use our memories. We have to look around the classroom. Maybe your heart starts beating because you see the boy that you have a crush on and he's in that next class period and he makes your heart beat really fast. Or maybe you walk into the class and I hand you a test and you're like, oh my God, I totally forgot that we had a test. So in one situation, you see the boy you have a crush on, your heart is beating because you feel lust, you feel excitement for seeing him. The other situation, I'm handing you a test and you are feeling dread and anxiousness and anger that you forgot about the test. Okay? Totally different emotions, same set of physical reactions. So the important part of the Schachter-Singer or the Schachter two-factor theory is cognition. You have to think about it. You have to label the reaction that you're feeling based on what you're experiencing or what you're seeing in your environment. So really important, underline the cognition part. So the cognitive mediation theory, again, the person must interpret the situation first. Okay, one person could see a dog and be really excited because they love dogs, or one person could be really afraid because they're afraid of dogs and they've had a bad experience. So you have to interpret the situation first. Is the dog just sitting there with his tail wagging and a grin on his face, or is he barking and lunging at you? Okay, so you have to interpret the situation. The last of the theories that we're going to talk about is the facial feedback hypothesis. So this says that reading facial expressions on someone's face tells us how we should react or what we should interpret in that situation. And Paul Ekman developed this theory, and he said that there were 7 universal expressions. No matter what culture, what race, what ethnicity you are from, what language you speak, whether you are wealthy or you are poor, okay, no matter what country you grew up in, there are 7 universal expressions that everybody can read. Okay, so here they are. Okay. So take a look at them. Don't cheat. Don't look at the answers yet, but take a look at them and see if you can interpret what the facial expressions are. Okay. A, anger, fear, I'm afraid of something. Ugh, disgusted. Okay. Happy, surprise, sadness. Okay. So these are all the different emotions that Ekman said we can universally interpret on different faces. And you notice male, female, different ethnicities. It isn't making a difference on whether or not you're able to interpret those facial expressions. All right, so here's a little chart that gives you a summary of all of these emotional theories. Okay, so James Lang, emotions arise from our awareness of specific bodily responses. So we observe our heart racing after a threat and then feel afraid. So the heart racing happens first, then we feel the emotion. Cannon-Bard, emotion arousing stimuli trigger our bodily responses and simultaneously subjective experience. So our heart races at the same time we feel afraid. Schachter-Singer, or the Schachter two-factor, our experience of emotion depends on 2 things: our arousal and our ability to cognitively label what we're feeling. So we may interpret our arousal as fear or excitement depending on the context. Zajonc and Ledoux, we haven't really talked about, but just super quickly, embodied responses happen instantly without conscious appraisal. So we automatically feel startled by a sound in the forest before labeling it as a threat. And then Lazarus says that cognitive appraisal, is it dangerous or not? Okay, that was that cognitive mediation theory. Is it dangerous or not? Sometimes without our awareness defines emotion. So, oh, that sound in the forest is just wind, nothing to be afraid of. So a couple of things about experiencing emotion. This idea of catharsis. Okay, catharsis is an emotional release. So if you've had a really, really tough day and you go home and you cry it out for 10 minutes and then you feel so much better, right? You feel like a weight lifted off. That's a catharsis. So the catharsis hypothesis is that releasing aggressive energy, whether through action or fantasy, can help to relieve aggressive urges. So for example, if you go to the gym and you beat on a punching bag, you're getting that aggressive energy out so that you don't go home and are aggressive with your siblings or with your significant other. Or maybe you go home and you play really violent video games, and that gets your aggression out so that you're not exhibiting aggression in your relationships. Another concept in experiencing emotion is this feel-good, do-good phenomenon, which just means that people tend to be a lot more helpful when they're in a good mood. Okay, so they're a lot more willing to help out or to do things to help out other people when they're already in a really good mood. All right, so that is it for emotion. We will kind of play around a little bit with these theories because I know the theories are really difficult. We will play around with them in class tomorrow. Please remember, bring your questions. See you tomorrow.